Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for joining this session where we'll cover what's in store for the Leganto 2026 roadmap. Really nice to do this session. I'm excited about the chance to share this with all of you. We're excited about what we have in store for you. We will be recording the session, so I'll share it with you after. We'll also post it to the Knowledge Center, and the updated roadmap has also been posted to the Knowledge Center. I think you can search Leganto Roadmap and find it, but I'll also share the link as part of the recording. Based on how it went in the first session, I can tell you I'll probably forget to share the time estimates for most of these developments, but there is a little bit more detail about them on our website, including estimates for the first half of the year or the second half of the year for each thing. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say is that we have the chat. So feel free to ask questions as we go. We do have time to cover your questions. So feel free to ask them. You don't have to wait until the end. I'll try to pick up as much as I can unless it looks like we're running out of time, in which case I'll save kind of the rest for the end, but feel free to ask them as we go. So before we dive in, I want to make sure that you know who we are. So I'm Jesse Ransom. I'm leading the Leganto product team. I've been working with Leganto for, I can't quite do the math, but I think it's about 7 years now. So it's nice to still be here. It's always nice to have the chance to talk with all of you and to see so many familiar names on the list of attendees. It feels like a family at this point. And I'm excited, if you haven't met Yael, I'm excited to introduce Yael to you. Yael.
Hi, I'm Yael. I'm a product manager with the Leganto group, and it's great to be here.
If you haven't met Yael, you may be hearing from her more this year. She's going to be pretty heavily involved in a lot of the research that we're doing for some of these developments. She is the one kind of responsible for making the magic happen. She has a background in user experience. She does a lot of thinking about the workflows of the system and how people would use the system. So we've got a lot of work for her this year. So some of you may have the chance to work with her depending on how you participate in the product. So what we're going to cover today, I'll do a very quick summary of some of the things from 2025, very quick, because I want to focus on 2026. So we'll spend most of our time looking at the 2026 plans, and then, as I said, we will have time for Q&A at the end. Starting with 2025, though, we did do some things here related to supporting the library. I'm very sorry, I'm just going to stop sharing for just a minute here because I can't see my slides very well, so I need to make a quick change. And the WebEx is not making it easy for me to do that, so let me share again. And here we have this, and now I think I can see you guys. Okay, so we did some work last year to help with library efficiencies when you're working on lists inside of Leganto. A lot of this actually came from the clipboard. So the clipboard was in the classic UI. It was not available in the new UI. We heard from you that you wanted it, that you missed it. So Yael did several user interviews and watched some of you work, maybe several of you work, and we used that to rebuild the clipboard, but that also led to the library view and also this manage link to library workflow, because as we were watching you work, we realized that there were some places where we could make some improvements and save some time for you. So those are some nice things that came about last year. We also introduced the reporting using the school faculty level. This isn't a huge development, but I'm mentioning it because we're adding on to it this year. So I just wanted to set the stage here. We added a new field for reporting purposes that lets you add an additional level. It's meant to be really an additional level in the hierarchy. So you could have, depending on the language that works best for your institution, you might have a school and then academic departments within that school. And now you can report on how your library is kind of reaching within this additional level of hierarchy within the institution. We also added some out-of-the-box inventory reports. I'm really highlighting this here because I have talked to many people in the meantime and have the impression that people missed this. So there are now some out-of-the-box reports that are really meant to help you measure. You can see very specifically here, not measure, look at the titles of physical-only citations, electronic-only citations, both physical and electronic, or any electronic inventory. There are some limitations to this, so I'm going to talk about this in more detail. We're, I think, going to be expanding this pretty significantly in terms of what you're able to do this year, so that's something that we're really excited about. We also added the student exploration features in 2025. I can't quite keep track of my years. If I mix them up, you'll know I mean last year versus this year. But we added this in 2025. When you turn it on, students can now explore beyond specifically what has been assigned to them. I think this is really nice for other versions and other editions where maybe you only have a print copy of one edition and you have an electronic copy of another edition. Students would have the flexibility to expand beyond that. But it does also include recommendations. So, if students want to see other articles similar to the one that has been assigned to them for their course, they can do that. So this is now available in Leganto. And then the very big development, which I'm sure you have heard of by now because I feel like I talk about this nonstop. I have talked about this nonstop, but it's the Syllabus Assistant. So in case you haven't heard about it, this is the ability to either upload a file or just paste a list of references into the system and use that to create a reading list or use that to add citations to an existing reading list. So this was a huge development for us last year, and we did a lot of work to build functionality on top of that or workflows on top of that. We're excited about this, but I'm also going to refer to a little bit of an expansion on this that's coming as well. So that's all I have from last year. I did promise it would be quick because I do want to spend most of our time on the upcoming year. I will share these slides with you, but there's not too many. There's just a couple of links in here. The release notes, of course, have the full details about everything that we did last year. The What's New videos tend to be 2 to 4 minutes long. They cover some of the bigger features that we develop, things that might have more complex workflows or might have specific configurations where we feel a little bit more detail or the chance to see this in action might be helpful for you. So if you feel like, oh, I missed all these release notes in 2025, I wonder what else they did, I suggest taking a look at those What's New videos because it does tend to be kind of the bigger things that we do that make it to the videos. So that's a good place to just get a good overview of what happened last year. That's it. So very quick. Now we'll dig into next year. And I do want to emphasize that the word highlights on here is there on purpose because we are doing quite a lot that is not going to be part of this presentation today. I specifically picked things that are the bigger things that we're doing, the things that we think will have an impact across all of our customers. There'll definitely be more than what you see on the slides here, but these are the kind of higher or maybe bigger stories that we wanted to share with you for the year. And before we get into that, I do have one update for you. The rest of the presentation will all be about functionality that we're adding, but we have made the decision to deprecate the assignments functionality in Leganto. This was not something that we decided on lightly. We did do quite a lot of work to think about this, and I believe I spoke with every customer who has used this in the last year. If you are one of them and you didn't talk to me, please do reach out. If you used it previously and I didn't get a chance to talk to you, please don't hesitate to reach out. We definitely want to hear from you if this is something that impacts you. I'm specifically talking about the functionality where within the learning management system, you can create an assignment, the student adds annotations to a file, and then the instructor grades that assignment, and the grades sync back to the gradebook of the learning management system. So that is the functionality that we call assignments. We have separate functionality that we call social reading or social annotations. These are within a Leganto list. If you have an uploaded file, you can have, the students can comment on the file, or the instructor can add comments to the file. This is not going anywhere. We're definitely keeping this functionality. It's pretty heavily used among our customers. It's very specifically the graded assignments. And it's not very heavily used, but we also have heard from you that it's difficult for you on the library to support because all of the functionality is in the learning management system. We had to do this for privacy reasons because of the grades, but it makes it very difficult for the library to see what's happening, to help support your instructors. We've also heard some feedback that our customers are concerned about having grades in a system that the library is responsible for because of the sensitivity around that data. And also that instructors don't necessarily think to talk to the library about assignments for their courses, or they're not looking to the library for that kind of guidance. So at this point, it feels like it's not a good fit for our product. It feels like it's not a good fit for our customers. And it has also been difficult for us to maintain because of the integration, that deep integration with the learning management system. So I'm mentioning this today, like I said, not very many people are using it. We do have a couple of assignments running this term, so we're definitely, from a timing perspective, we want to support any instructors who are still using it. We're not trying to cut anybody off. We're not trying to make anything harder for you. But I do want to point out that this will be coming in the future. So if you have promotional materials about assignments, if you're talking about it in your presentations to instructors, think about that. Think about taking that out. You might think about removing the integration with the LMS. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, if you have any comments, if you're upset about this. Please feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to talk to anybody. I'd be happy to help with anything that you need for this. I can say it won't be removed this year because we know that people are using it actively, but we will look at the data probably in the second half of the year and make a decision around the timing. Everything else is things that we're adding. So that's the one thing that I wanted you to be aware of, that we will be deprecating. But everything else is things that we're adding into the system. As I said in the beginning, we're excited about this. We're excited about what we believe is the added value that this will bring to our customers. Again, this is not everything that we're going to be doing, but I separated the roadmap into these focus areas and kind of we've organized these stories into these kind of higher level topics. We are doing other things that don't fit cleanly into these topics. So if there's something you're waiting for, that doesn't mean it's not going to get done this year, but we are kind of thinking about how Leganto can help you support your goals and the types of things that you need to do within your institution and also within your library and the workflows within your library. So I'll go into each of these in more detail, and I'll show you some of the things that we're going to be doing that align with these topics. The first one is about supporting more accessible course materials and the workflows for more accessible course materials. I think I'm going to jump ahead rather than go through the slide here because we will go through all of these areas in a little bit more detail. So this is really about making it easier for you to provide more accessible content as part of courses. So that's what we're working on here, and there's kind of two sides to this. The first side is workflows to help you manage files, track files, track how accessible your content is today. And then the second piece is about functionality to help make those resources more accessible. I will point out that we added the EPUB viewer in December, so that's kind of technically part of this story as well, but not for 2026 since it came in December. But the EPUB viewer is now available in Leganto as an additional viewer option for course materials or for files in the system. So the first thing that's part of this story for this upcoming year is about the ability to track what's going on with the files in the system. You have asked in the past, some of you have asked in the past, how can we track that a file has been reviewed? How can we track that a file is machine readable? How can we store this information? And up to now, what I hear from you is that you're managing this with either file naming conventions or maybe tags on the citations. So we want to provide the functionality that allows you to track this kind of information, that you could say on a per file basis, whether it's accessible or not. These will be configurable labels. So if you want to have, much more specific labels about what that means for you, you can do that. You'll be able to put that information into the system. But the idea is that you'll be able to see, what you have already done so that you can make a better use of your time if you are spending some time fixing files or making them more accessible. And you'll also be able to report on this in analytics. So if you do need to be able to see, what percentage of our materials are already accessible, what percentage still needs to be checked or might need to be fixed, you'd be able to see that kind of information in the system. Part of supporting this functionality we'll also be adding the option to upload multiple versions of a file or multiple formats of a file. This was actually an older ideas exchange item that we had previously closed, but we opened it again because now we are going to be adding this into the system. So if you do have, maybe you want to have the original version of the file and then you pull the text out and you have a text-only version of a file, you would be able to upload both of those into the system. That's just one example. This is meant to be very flexible, so you can upload, as many different versions or formats as you need to help support accessibility. It's worth noting here that there are some copyright implications. This is actually why we had previously closed the idea. The copyright will continue to sit at the citation level, and the system, the UI, is designed to, let's say, discourage instructors from uploading chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, chapter 4. We really want this to be used for alternative formats or alternative versions of the same file for copyright purposes. So we've designed a UI that will make it less useful if they're trying to hack the system and use it incorrectly. There are some bonus things that you get as part of this because we do need to update the way that we're managing files. So you'll be able to update the file name within Leganto, the way that the file name displays, without having to download the file, resave it, and upload it again. A nice kind of small bonus thing. And you'll also be able to see the user who uploaded a file, which you haven't been able to see up to now. So we're adding in some additional data as part of this development. There's a question in the chat if you'll be able to restrict the visibility to certain groups of students. We are not going to be managing that. So in Leganto, if the student is able to see, or if any student is able to see the file, then all students are able to see it. There is some functionality available in Alma Digital that lets you restrict visibility or restrict usage to specific users or to specific user groups. So if you're not familiar with that, feel free to reach out and we can share more details, but we won't be managing that kind of access permission in Leganto. We're also adding in a workflow. I'm getting distracted by the chat, I'm sorry. We're adding in a workflow where users can request an accessible file. We have talked to many of you as part of developing this roadmap, and we heard that it's very difficult for you to say with certainty that a file is actually accessible because it's very dependent on the user and what they need and what the requirements are. So what we're adding here will be a workflow where the user can come in and say, I need an accessible version of this material, whether it's an uploaded file or a link or whatever it might be. And behind the scenes, you'll be able to configure who this request will go to. So we do realize that not all libraries are the ones responsible for this work. A lot of times it's actually an Office of Disability Services, for example, or someone else outside the library. So you'll be able to configure who is receiving this notification once it has been sent. And then the rest of the workflow will actually happen outside the system. So outside the system, there would be an email, and whoever receives that email would follow up directly with the student. But this is meant to be kind of an option of last resort, if you will. So you have a way to hit students or to get students at the point of need when they're trying to access this file and they're not able to. We want to provide kind of next steps for users so that everybody's able to access their course materials. I did do the first session already, so I want to emphasize that this will be, like everything that we're adding, something you opt into. If you already have workflows for this that work in a different way on purpose, you certainly don't have to use any of this functionality, but it will be available in the system if you choose to use it. We'll also be adding a field that holds alt text for images that have been uploaded to Leganto lists. So if your instructors are using images in their courses, when they upload those images or when somebody uploads those images, there'll be a new field to put in the alt text information. We are also working on a proof of concept right now to pull alt text using AI. So I have pending proof of concept on the slide here, but this is looking very promising. So this is potentially going to come as a second stage of this development, but we are looking at how we can make that process of getting the alt text fairly simple, but we do want to be able to add essentially additional information to help make these resources more accessible for students. So these are really, when I said in the beginning, we have kind of workflows around the management of accessibility information. That's all of what I've shared so far. All of this will be in the first half of the year, potentially pending this proof of concept on the AI alt text. That might be later, but the rest will be in the first half of the year. We're also looking at how we can improve the accessibility of the files themselves or make the files themselves more accessible. So the first thing that will be available is that we will just run an OCR process on the files. So making the machine readable text in situations where files don't have that information already. I know many of you already are doing this type of work, but we want to be able to either do that for you within the system or maybe track that this has happened. So we want to be able to make the files more accessible from that perspective. We are also working on a proof of concept. I should say Clarivate is working on a proof of concept that's around using AI to fix files, to make files more accessible. This one is still kind of in the middle stages. So I can't say at this point whether it will be successful or not, but this is something that we're working on. So assuming that we can get that to a high level of quality, we'll be adding that into the system. But this would be much later in the year because it is pending this proof of concept work. And then I added it here. I usually put this slide at the end of my presentation, but it seemed very appropriate to put it in here. Of course, as always, we are also continuing to maintain an accessible interface for Leganto. This is, in addition to everything that we do, we're always thinking about making sure that our system is accessible for all users. So we are what I believe is in the final stages of an audit process. We work with DEQ Systems, an outside vendor who does an audit of our systems, of our interface quite regularly. So we're involved in that process with them right now. It always tends to take a little bit longer than I expect it to take. So I think we are in the final stages, but I expect we'll have an updated VPAT available in the first quarter of the year. So in the next couple of months. We will post that on our Knowledge Center, and there's a link on the slide here, but I think you can also just Google Leganto accessibility and you'll find it. We are working on a WCAG 2.2 VPAT, so the next one that's published will be a 2.2 VPAT, so that should be available soon. Okay, so that is, sorry, go ahead.
Before we move on, we have one more question regarding the story. Is there a way to link to multiple format on publisher website, PDF, HTML? which can be more accessible?
So it depends on the website itself. If they do provide links to directly to different formats, you would be able to you can add multiple links into our system. Sometimes what I've seen is that they link only to a single page that then holds all of the different formats. So it would depend on what the publisher's website allows you to do. Thank you. And Kevin is doing some promotion here for his Curve tickets, so go Kevin. He already promoted to us as well. Okay, so let's move on now into the second story here is about, in the second high level, let's see what I call them, focus area, is about improving the discovery and use of affordable content. And I want to clarify what we mean by affordable. So we mean affordable to students. In some regions where students are purchasing a lot of their content, we want to provide access to materials that are either already available to in the library and therefore affordable to students or free to students, or also things that don't require any cost to the students. So open educational resources or open access resources. And for regions where students are not expected to pay for their course materials, it's often the library who needs affordable content. So again, open access, open educational resources, or things that are already within your library collections. So this is what we're talking about when we're talking about this affordable content. We want to make it easier for you to find content, to use content, to measure how much or what types of content are being used in courses. So the first piece of this is exactly that. There's two sides to this, measuring and highlighting the use of OER, open educational resources, and OA resources on lists. We're doing this actually as kind of two separate stages. Right now, behind the scenes, we're in the process of adding all of this metadata into the system. So you can't see it yet, but your records are starting to get enhanced under the hood at this moment. So we're adding the open access status from CDI. You can see this in Primo or Summon. You can see this when you're pulling resources or when you're searching the library. But up to now, we haven't kept that information in the system. So we are now keeping that information in the system, going back and retroactively adding it to your historical records. So we're pulling that information in. We will also add rules around identifying that something is OER. So there'll be some rules that come out of the box. So there is a field on some of the CDI records for OER. Some of the Creative Commons licenses will be mapped to OER. We will put in some specific website domains that are considered OER, but this will also be configurable. So if you have things that are more unique to your institution or things that are commonly used within your institution, you'll be able to put that information in as well. So you'll be able to track this in analytics, and that is the report on piece. So if you wanted to see what percentage of all of our course materials are OER or open access, you'd be able to pull that kind of information out of the system. And then you'll also be able to have a visual indication within the list, and that's what the screenshot is here. It's a mock-up of this, but an indication where something is open access or OER. The open access piece of this came from Ideas Exchange, and we asked you how you would use it. So what we heard is that you're really trying to promote the use of open access content, and also that you want to highlight to students when something is open access, so they'll be able to access it when they're no longer affiliated with the institution. So this will all be coming in the first half of the year. And then the next part of this story is about recommendations for OER replacements. We had something kind of similar on our roadmap for 2025 for last year. We did quite a lot of we had quite a lot of conversations with many of you about this functionality, and we've kind of changed our direction compared to what we were originally working on. The original concept here from last year was that the instructor would be kind of starting from scratch. So they don't have a list already. They can upload information about their course and get recommendations for things that they might consider including in their list or using in their list. But the feedback that we got from, I'm going to say many of you, possibly all of you, but definitely many of you, was that that's not actually how people use the system. That people very rarely come to Leganto looking for what they're going to use in their course. They tend to already have a list for their course. Maybe they've inherited a list from the previous instructor. They tend to maybe have already found the resources that they wanted to use. And so what we heard from many of the people that we talked to is the need is more about replacing specific items on the list where maybe the library can't purchase a copy, or continuing to hold the license for something is prohibitively expensive, let's say. So now we're kind of shifting this direction to focus on OER replacements. So the idea is that I have maybe built this list and I have a few things that are not available from the library, so I can get recommendations for things that I might want to use to replace that item that I had chosen. And you can see this is the mock-up that you're looking at here, but we're thinking about the option to both replace the original item, but also to add it as an additional resource on the list. So this is something we're excited. Yep. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. We have a few questions about the OER in the chat.
Okay, perfect.
So they have in their own system from a provincial OER repository, not CDI. Is there a way to easily update these records to flag as OER?
This is a good comment. I'm glad you asked this, and I'm going to save it. I am guessing you have MARC records is how I'm reading this, and it's not something that we had thought about. So let me, I'll make a note of this, and we'll think about how we can incorporate that. Feel free to reach out. It'd be useful to have more information about how you're tracking these records in your system. We'll have to think about what this would look like in Leganto, but I appreciate you bringing it up.
Another question we have from Sarah is, can we manually flag an individual citation as an OER if needed? Manual entry as an external link, not from CDI.
Yep. Yes, you will be able to do that. And our goal is to set as many ways that you could set these in bulk as we could reasonably do, but we also recognize that there'll always be exceptions that don't fit into those bulk rules. So we will also have the option to set things manually.
And then lastly, also a way to make it easier for faculty to find or add OER content that is Remo.
I believe Primo is actually working on this for, I think, the upcoming year. I'll say across the organization, we're all kind of thinking about OER, how we can highlight OER. At this point in Primo, it's specifically flagged as open access and not separately, but I hope I'm not speaking out of turn here. I do believe that this is something that they're working on, and we'll be able to leverage that work as well.
What open access / OER collections will be included in the list of recommendations?
I don't know this for sure yet. We're looking at partnering with some of the different OER providers. So I can't say this for sure, but certainly as we work on this, as we develop this, and absolutely when we release it, you will know that information. And this was feedback that we got as we were talking to people that, recognizing we will probably never get all of the OER that exists, you would want to know, okay, we've already checked these, 5 places because they're built into Leganto, and now we want to look in these additional places that are maybe more unique to us. So we do realize that that's something you'll need to know, and we'll make that information available probably in the system and outside the system as we develop this.
That's it.
All right, perfect.
Oh, another one, 2 more.
Okay.
Is it possible for OER recommendation results to be prioritized by content from my home region?
I don't know at this point, but this is also something that we've heard as well. We are thinking about how to handle that, whether this is, filtering options or sorting options or something else. It is definitely feedback that we've heard so far.
And then another comment, the difficulty can be the licensing where a OER per may not be, sorry, when an open access per may not be a OER without further delving. So some level of control is welcome. I think part of a wider conversation.
Yeah, we did think about this as well. Just taking even like the Creative Commons licensing terms, some of the Creative Commons licenses are not technically OER because you can't make any changes to the content. And that's where we want to make this flexible, that you would be able to make these local decisions in terms of what you want to consider OER and what you don't. Some people have much more flexible definitions and some people have much stricter definitions. So we're trying to get something that works, for most people, or maybe gets you, let's say 90% of the way, but with the flexibility that you can use it how you need to from there. All right, I'm going to jump ahead. If there are more, we can get to them at the end. It's exciting to see all these questions and comments, and it's really useful for us to hear what you guys are thinking about this, and especially, some of the maybe workflows that we hadn't considered. So really appreciate your comments. Don't stop, but I'm going to keep going because I've got my eye on the clock here. So the next piece of this is about workflows for fulfilling course materials requirements. In other words, providing access to the content. So Leganto, of course, already has a lot of these workflows, or Alma already has these workflows, but we want to either expand the options that are available or make them easier to use. So the first piece of this is already out. The reading list data, making the reading list data available in Rialto. This became available in the January release. I believe if you're using both products, you'll see this information starting next week. There's an indexing job that is running behind the scenes to kind of send the information to Rialto and index the information within Rialto. But you'll be able to search within the Rialto marketplace for citations. And I have the screenshot here to show you the new options that were added. So you can search for course dates. The options are current and future courses. And you can also search by the tags. So if you wanted to see only essential resources, you'd be able to do that. And I added another one to the screenshot that's held in my institution because I wanted to point out that you can use these new searching options alongside the very powerful searching options that already exist within Rialto. So you would be able to see, for example, as I have here, all of your, or maybe all of your future courses where things have been tagged as essential and they're not already held in your institution. You can do that. You can also see things like, is there a new edition available? Rialto has a lot of this data, so you can do some pretty powerful searching here. They'll also be adding, or they have added, the tags on the individual items. So you'll see this, of course, as part of your search results. But if you are not necessarily thinking about courses, maybe you're just in Rialto, or someone is in Rialto kind of browsing for things they could buy, they would also see this course materials indication. So that can often be something that makes something a candidate for purchase or not. So we want to make that very visible. So this is really about exposing the data within the marketplace. And then the second piece of this story is about the workflows associated with this. So if you do purchase something that is linked to a course, we want to, or that's being used in a course, we'll then go and update the citation. So the citation will automatically link to the new inventory that you've purchased. And in this new development, we're no longer starting from a specific citation. So if that citation is used in multiple lists, we'll update all of them. Or sometimes I know a book will be used multiple times within a list if the instructor is referring to multiple chapters, for example. So we'll update all of the citations that are relevant based on whatever you've purchased. So I think this is a nice option, really just about exposing the data, or sharing the data in both systems. This is indeed only available to institutions that have Rialto, and that's where you would see this data. You would, within the Rialto marketplace, see these indications that something's being used in a course. The second one here I'm really excited about. I think some of you will probably really be excited about this because I've talked to some of you about the hacks that you would have to do to get this data in the system today. But the ability to filter lists according to inventory type, we're thinking of this as part of a fulfillment story because there's a very nice filtering option for things that don't have any inventory. So, from a processing perspective, you would be able to pretty easily filter your Leganto list and see only the things that don't have any access point for them. But for your end users, they'll also be able to see specifically physical inventory, online, files. So this is going to be really nice, I think. You'll be able to see this data in Leganto and also in analytics. So when I mentioned before the inventory reports that we added last year, here we'll have essentially an indication that's part of the citation metadata that says what the availability is for each of the items that are on the list. Also related to the inventory, we want to flag resources that have limitations from the concurrent user license. I did get a lot of questions about this in the first session that I did. We do have this information in the system already. Thanks to the curve enhancement process, we added this, I think, at the beginning of last year. So on the full view today, you can see the access model information. But we did some interviews with instructors this year, and one of the comments we got that really resonated with us is, I added the library resource to my list and I didn't realize that my students wouldn't be able to access it, or that only one student would be able to access it. This is basically unusable at that point. When you're in the middle of the term, one student goes to access it and now nobody else can. So what we want to do is kind of flag these in advance. There might be nothing that you can do about it. It may be that that's the only option that's available, but we want to expose that information in a much more prominent way to the instructor so that at least they know that this is what's going on with this resource. Maybe this would be a good candidate for that replacement workflow that we talked about, or maybe they want to mark it as an optional reading or whatever it might be, but we just want to make that information available to the instructor. Or to make it much more prominent to the instructor. And this one as well is about exposing more information about what's available. So this one is about checking for newer editions that are available for purchase. This story also uses Rialto, so you do have to be a Rialto customer for this. But within the Leganto interface, we will provide a way for you to check, or for the instructor to check, whether a newer edition is available. Someone pointed out to me in the earlier session that the screenshot here says article. This is a mock-up, so we are not looking at updated editions of articles. This would be books. It's using the Rialto data for things that would be available for purchase. So there'll be the option to search your list to see if there's any new editions available, or to search for a specific item to see if something is available, and then also a workflow that sends this to the library so the library can see if this is something that they can purchase. So this should be coming in the first half of the year. This one was actually on the roadmap for last year, but we had to do a couple of sort of cross-development work among the Leganto team and the Rialto team. So there's a few kind of final things that we're putting in right now, but this is very close to being available. So you should have this very soon. I see the questions. I'm going to get through this section and then I'll come back to your questions. The next one here is we want to build dedicated purchase request workflows in Leganto. I know that many of you already have built kind of purchasing processes in the system using tags, maybe using notes, things like that. Ultimately, where we are with this is that this feels like something that requires training in the system. If instructors want to purchase something, they need to know that they need to add a tag, or they need to know that they need to add a note, or whatever it might be. And as you know, this is something that we're always thinking about with Leganto. How can we build a system that doesn't require that you come to a training session before you can use it? So this felt like a bit of a dead end to us in some ways. So we want to build out dedicated requesting workflows. Of course, this would be something you enable. So if you like the way that it's working today and it's working for you, that's fine. If you don't want instructors to request purchase and you're just going to review and decide what you're going to buy, of course, that's fine as well. But we do also want to have dedicated purchase request workflows. And we are also thinking about the ability to request things both individually and in bulk. And so you can kind of see this all sort of tying together now, thinking about filtering a list to the things that don't have any inventory, maybe filtering to the books, and then from there being able to request purchase of all of those resources. So we want to build in, like I said, dedicated workflows to help manage the what happens next processes. And then speaking of the what happens next processes, we're also thinking about expanding on the Syllabus Assistant workflow. So today with the Syllabus Assistant, when you upload a file or you create a list from the Syllabus Assistant, you go into this wizard about linking resources to the library collection. As a side note, we are continuing to look for ways that we can link more of those resources automatically. But there's also a workflow where you can manually say, yes, this is the right one. This is the one that I want to use. But again, this is another part of the system that kind of feels like a dead end at this point. If you don't find something in the library collection, you need to follow up on it. You need to remember to go back to it and do something else with it. So on the mock-up here, it's just other options, but we're thinking about this might be things like request that the library purchase this resource. It might be to use a personal copy. This is functionality that's already in the system. If you let instructors loan you things that you're going to put on reserves for them. Maybe an option would be to look for a replacement. So this piece here will be late in the year because you can see we need to still build some of this functionality into the system for the purchase requests and for the replacement workflows. But we are kind of thinking about how we can guide instructors through the steps that they need to take to kind of get their list ready for you, as well as how we can make it easier for you or faster for you to provide access to these resources. All right, so that's what I have for this fulfillment story. So let me go back up here and see the questions. So there's some questions about Rialto. In Rialto, if we bought a new edition of something that's on multiple reading lists, we could choose to automatically update all the citations to make them point to the new edition. Yes, this is based on a parameter. So it is actually something you would set in your system, but as part of this development, there's a flag that is something like, I can't remember the exact flag. If you look at the release notes for January, or maybe it's December for Rialto, you will see what the flag name is, but there's something about, do you want to update other versions of the citation? Or maybe it's formats, I can't remember the exact language, but there is a flag that you would specify if you do want to update the older citations or not, because we know that not everybody does. So that's something that you can set. Will the inventory types be per edition or across all editions of a title? I assume this is about the filter by inventory type. So it'll be based on the citation. So if the citation has print and electronic inventory, we show that. It's based on the inventory that displays in the system, in the Leganto interface. That's the inventory that we're using. So depending on what you see when you look at the screen, that's the inventory that will display here. And a thumbs up on the inventory filter. I figured some of you would be very excited about this. The inventory type will need further explanation in terms of the expectations and availability. Yes, so there is probably a lot to do related to the inventory types. I can't remember if I said this, but this is another area where we've been adding this information behind the scenes for quite some time. Some of this is also to support the curve development that we're doing, where we need to track which portfolio ID is being used. You know, we're at a point now where we're kind of touching this part of the system, these metadata about citations, about inventory. So we're trying to provide as much functionality on top of that as we can. Okay, so let me jump ahead, and the last kind of story or the last focus area here is about improving the user experience for library staff. And I'll highlight just a few things, but one of them is giant. So the first piece is some improvements to the no list expected workflow. This was an enhancement that we added to the system a couple years ago that was part of a NARS request or a curve request from a few years ago. And a really nice option, but I talked to several libraries who said they couldn't use it for various reasons. So we've added in a few bells and whistles on top of what you previously had that I think do make this much more usable. And all of this is available now. The first piece was in December and the second piece was in January, but there is now functionality where instructors can mark that a course is no list expected, or if they did that already, they can unmark it. So this is really nice. It puts the control within the instructor to make those changes as needed. There's also now functionality so the library can set a course as no list expected in bulk. So I think this is kind of wrapping up the rest of this feature. So if you hadn't been using it, or if you had and these things were bothering you, these are now available to you. I can see a comment. It's hard to see that no list expected control down here. So this is good feedback. I don't know if this is a mock-up or if this is actually the screenshot. I can't remember, but happy to have that feedback. The button is small. Okay, good for us to see. All right, the next piece of this is indeed to rebuild the course loader integration profile. So this is to incorporate the new school/faculty field that we added to incorporate that new data. This is something that we kind of needed a bit more time on. We couldn't do this right away because we know that this is something, the course loader integration profile and getting it to work correctly is something that often requires partnership with your IT department. So what we will offer for this is 2 versions. Version might not be the right language, but that's what I'm using. 2 versions of the integration profile. So you'll be able to say, for this load, we're using the older file structure. For this other load, we're using the newer file structure. So you'll be able to use either or, depending on what you need, depending on the type of support that you're getting from your IT department. Because it is expecting the data in a very specific format, just adding a new field kind of throws off all of the data in the course loader. Everything kind of ends up in the wrong place. So we really needed to think about this and doing this correctly. So this is something that will be coming probably around the middle of the year. I don't have kind of better estimates at this point, but roughly May, June-ish is my guess. So this is something that we're working on. And then we are nearing the end here, this out-of-the-box workflow reports. This was, I have on my slide here, 3rd time's the charm. This was on the roadmap for 2024, on the roadmap for 2025. I really debated whether I should even bother putting it on here for 2026, but we are actively building it right now. We had quite a lot of data issues that we ended up needing to work through. You have maybe seen some of these measurements that we added last year around like citation set to complete by, list set to complete by, citation sent information. We added all of those data elements so that we could build out these types of dashboards, or that you would be able to build out these types of dashboards. But what we're building now is a workflow dashboard that lets you track things like how many lists or how many resources are complete by the first day of the course, how long does it take you to process a list or process specific types of citations, if you're providing, estimates to your instructors. Thinking about ways to automate some of this work, what percentage of citations are completing automatically, what types of citations are completing automatically, how long do the things take that don't complete automatically. It's really about exposing this kind of information, or letting you see this kind of information, letting you measure these processing tasks that you're doing. And then the last one, but from our perspective, one of the biggest ones is about the move to the Alma next-gen user experience. The screenshot that's on the slide here is from the PO lines area of Alma, but I think it's an area that really represents what this might look like for citations. So if you're not familiar with it, you can kind of see here, there's some new functionality that's available. The one that stands out here is that you can search the facets. So there's kind of small things and big things that you're able to do in the new user experience, which we're really excited about. We will specifically be looking at the courses, reading lists, and citations pages within Alma. This will be a very long process, and I will point to Yael here for a lot of the work that she'll likely do, again, thinking about these workflows. We're starting by watching some of you work. If you're interested in participating, we'd be happy to hear from you, but we want to start by watching how you process lists and citations within the system. The second step will be that we'll open up a Basecamp. We'll do a call on listserv, so if you're not on the listserv, please join. That's where we'll share a lot of this information, but we will do a call on the listserv for people who are interested in joining that Basecamp. Very little commitment from your part, but essentially we'll just share ideas, and if you have time to give us feedback, you will. We'll incorporate as much feedback as we get, and then we'll use that to build out the new pages. Like other parts of Alma, this will be available in stages. So there'll be an early access period where we work with kind of dedicated partners on very specific testing of the new screen, and then individual users will be able to opt into the new screens, and then it will be on by default, and users will be able to opt out of the new screens, and then finally it will be available to everyone. Based on these three items, I'm sure you can see that this will be a long process. We expect to start it this year and finish it next year, but we are starting already. So this is something we're excited about. I think, like I said, there's some really nice functionality we'll be able to add. All right, this is my last slide. I did want to point out that we're also working on your curve requests for this year. These are probably going to be available in, I think, May is my best guess for these two. They are both very big enhancements, very big developments, but we're working on them now. So thanks to you for all the feedback that everybody has provided on those and some of the additional questions that we had that many of you were really helpful in answering. So this will also be coming. I saved you 2 minutes for additional questions. It's good we did questions along the way because I think we did catch everything that I saw so far. If you have other questions or comments, feel free to put them in the chat. Feel free to reach out directly as well. We're always happy to hear from you. Anything you're excited about, anything you're concerned about, anything you wish was here and you didn't see, we're always happy to hear from you guys. I'll also point out that what you maybe can't see from the presentation is that there's quite a lot of behind the scenes infrastructure work that we're doing this year. This is for the OER and open access metadata, the inventory type metadata, the portfolio IDs that we're adding for the curve request. We're also doing some infrastructure changes to support multiple files. So there's a lot of work that's coming behind the scenes. And the reason I'm saying that is because I think the next couple of releases will look quite light to you. I saw the release notes for February. I'm not exactly sure what it looks like for March, but we're not slowing down. I don't want you to be worried that we're stopping our development efforts. We're absolutely not doing that, but there is some stuff that we're doing kind of under the hood to help support some of these bigger developments. So you'll probably see a slowdown for the next couple of months, and then a release that looks gigantic because we'll finally have all that infrastructure in place. So just kind of setting some expectations for the next couple of months. Otherwise, I'm not seeing any new questions coming in. Yael, do you have any that I didn't get?
No.
Okay. So thank you to all of you for joining. Thanks for your comments. Thanks for your feedback. Thanks for your partnership. We always appreciate being able to talk to you and hear from you about how you're using the system, what you're looking for, what you're trying to do, what you like, what you don't like. Always feel free to stay in touch with us. And otherwise, thank you.